Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to mumble! Introducing first, in the black corner, in his trademark office suit jacket tie, with a record of over 8,000 tax returns and 1,000 vast statements lodged, standing 5'11" and weighing in at... He is the man with the tax plan, the sultan of spreadsheets, the baron of vast statements, the king of ka-ching. Hailing from Ballarat, Victoria, Peter Angel! And in the white corner, sporting his struggling artist casuals, with a record of 1.5 feature-length films, 1 web series and numerous award-winning shorts, standing 5'10" and weighing in at... The Kubrick of Claptrap, the Mac Daddy of the MacGuffin, the Caesar of subtext, the champion of all things indie, the arrogant know-it-all Israeli bastard, now hailing from Melbourne, Victoria, the unpronounceable... How do you say this? Itai Guberman! Sit back and enjoy as they trade opinion jabs, fighting for their favourites and battling politely through the best and worst of... well, anything they see fit, really. The accountant versus the filmmaker. The financial consultant versus the artist. What can possibly go wrong? Tune in and find out on the Best and Worst podcast, where it ain't all black and white.
Hello and welcome to the Best and Worst podcast. Today we'll be talking about George Clooney films. My name's Peter Angel and I'm here with Itai Guberman. Hi Itai.
Hey.
How's it? How did you go getting through the 45, 50 films, however many it was?
Yeah. Got through them. That's what's important. Also a bit under the weather, so if I sound it, that's why it is. He's an interesting one.
He is, and there are some really good films there. I revisited a few. There was a few I hadn't seen, and there was a few I wasn't able to track down. So I guess right from the start, I wasn't able to see Welcome to Collinwood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also wasn't able to see Return of the Killer Tomatoes or Unbecoming Age.
Or Red Surf.
Red Surf, that's right. And then there was also 5 other ones that I didn't even look at because... going through IMDb, trying to work out if he really was in them or wasn't in them. One of them, he played a lip-syncing transvestite and was very far down the list. And then there was others that were such small parts that he was probably 20th, 30th main part.
As a rule, we tend to not include films they're not really his film or is not part of the main cast. Or, in his case, it was interesting because some of them he's not really... necessarily a main actor or main character, but he directed some of these. So they're actually, we included some of those. But also we don't include animated films, so we threw out South Park, Bigger, Longer and Uncut, and also...
Fantastic Mr. Fox.
The notable ones, really, where he had small part, ones like Gravity, where it's probably, maybe the most successful film or one of the most successful films he's been in, but we didn't include it. And also The Thin Red Line, which was a big sort of ensemble cast. He had a very small role.
We did include, I think, Spy Kids 3D, even though he only had a small part in that. But that's possibly because or at least in my case, I was looking for bad films. He was in that one, and it was a reasonable part, I guess. And, it made it easy to put down a bad Clooney film, particularly when he's in it so little, I guess.
Well, all right. While we're talking about it, let's get into that, I guess. As far as his worst were, it was tough to find bad films on his list. There's a lot of good films, above average maybe, that were tough to sort of keep out of a top list as well. But we sort of, I think, both kind of managed with that. As far as worst, for me, the ones that stood out, again, like I said, because it was tough, I included 5 films. And my 5 and 4 are Ocean's 12 at number 5 and Ocean's 13 at number 4 worst films. Because again, I'm not a big fan of heist films necessarily. They have to be really good to be good. I have liked a few in the past, but they were always fantastic. And I never felt that in the Ocean's series, the sequels were much of a departure from the original. That didn't even make my top, 15. And again, it's a good film. It's just not great. It's a remake.
Yeah, it looks like everybody involved had a lot of fun,
Absolutely.
but it doesn't necessarily translate that across to the film where, yeah, they're not doing anything different, are they?
Nah, it's the same story almost every time. There's not much difference, a few different characters, but it almost always ended up the same, and I was just left a bit bored. So the first one, while I kind of liked it, it's in my top maybe 20 of his. The other two, I felt like I shouldn't have bothered with.
Yeah.
Although I did watch them. But how many have you got on your worst list?
I've only got 3.
Oh, okay. So let's get into the really bad ones then.
Yeah. My worst was Spy Kids 3D, Game Over. Look, it rates 4.3 on IMDb, maybe a little low, but it's probably not far off.
Again, I didn't push too hard on it, with it because, again, it's not his film as such, but he is in a significant-ish role. So, yeah, it's in there. Yeah, my number 2. My number 3, though, was Batman and Robin.
Yeah, that was my third worst film of his. It's not like it's as bad a film as everybody makes out. It's a Batman film. It's a superhero film. Yeah, IMDb, I think it's got it at 3.8, which is ridiculously low, but it's not a good film.
No, that's sort of what brought it to this list. It's a film that I think gets a lot of flack that it doesn't necessarily deserve, but it also doesn't deserve to be praised. So I'm fine with just kind of leaving it alone more than anything. But yeah, it's one of the worst of the Batmans that I'm not a huge fan of anyway. But my number 1 absolute worst film of his, anyway, in my opinion, is The Peacemaker.
Yeah, my second least favorite. Again, it's not terrible, but it's not good. It's just, what are they doing,
Yeah, I just could not, suspension of disbelief was a major factor there. I did not believe the movie, did not believe the characters, did not believe that what I was watching. It's it's got a very, very generous 5.9 on IMDb.
Yeah.
To me, it would be potentially below 5, but generously, I would give it maybe 5. Yeah, not a good film. It was easy for me to pick it to top the list because also I think I had some expectations from it.
Yeah.
To at least be okay, and it wasn't.
Yeah, and look, it's interesting. Both those films were 1997 as well, so it wasn't a great year for him, I guess, creatively. Probably he was paid a lot of money to do them, so I guess in that way it wasn't so bad.
And as far as box office, they may have done all right. I'm not sure.
Well, Batman and Robin actually did $238 million at the box office. And then The Peacemaker cost $50 million and it brought in $110 million. So it's solid-ish,
Yeah, may have broken even with DVD and all that. I remember it being sort of a minor hit. It wasn't a flop, but, I felt that was undeserved. I thought it should have flopped.
Yeah.
And Spy Kids, I'm not sure about the series. I assume that they kind of dropped as they went. For the first one must have made the most money.
No, well, not at least at the box office. So the third one, which is my least favorite of his films, $38 million budget, and it brought in $197 million at the box office.
Oh, okay.
So 518% return on investment, whereas the original Spy Kids cost $35 million and brought in $148 million. So I'm assuming there must have been a lot of
hang on,
DVD sales.
But which percentage is better?
Well, Spy Kids 3. Yeah, Spy Kids 2, return on investment 423%. Spy Kids, 518% return at Spy Kids 3D. A stinker, though.
The first Spy Kids made it onto sort of my middle list where, it didn't crack the top 15. It's not the worst. It's not too bad. It's a kid's film. And I didn't mind it.
Yeah.
And I found that Clooney has a lot of films in that range. That's why it was so hard to pick. A lot of films are good to sort of above average to good.
Yep.
But nothing terribly spectacular about them. And it made it very, very, very tough. Because you kind of look at them and you go, yeah, that's a decent film. It's okay. But something about it didn't come across, didn't really move me one way or the other.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were on topics that should move you one way or another. I rewatched Money Monster. And, that kind of film should have really had more of an effect on me. But it just kind of went by me. And it's like, yeah, it's an okay film. Everything about it is fine.
And it is, it's a film like a lot of other films where, someone's done it a lot better. People do it worse, but, it's got Clooney in. He's very charismatic and probably lifts it above if he wasn't in it.
Yeah, and a lot of his films also have a pretty good cast, so it kind of gets my expectations up, perhaps. And I find that a lot of them I kind of watch and I go, well, it wasn't as good as I expected it to be. For example, The Monuments Men. I thought that was going to be much better, and it wasn't. It was okay. Kind of enjoyed it, but, nothing major. Same with The Ides of March. I thought it was going to be fantastic, and it wasn't. It was okay.
Yeah.
Other ones, I remember maybe more fondly because I had less expectations, maybe like One Fine Day, a romantic comedy, romantic drama perhaps, that I thought was going to be a bit meh. And I watched it and I was like, yeah, that wasn't bad.
Yeah, but again, a couple of very likable leads in it.
Yeah. And Leatherheads was similar. I actually wasn't sure what I was expecting, even though it had a decent cast. I actually enjoyed it, but didn't crack my top list.
No, and it's the interesting thing with Leatherhead is, you sit down and you think, oh yeah, I really want to like this, and it's an okay film, but on the numbers, it's a $58 million budget, and it only brought in $41 million at the box office. So one of its least successful films.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because of the actual subject matter. The plot was not something that would interest a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to make sure that it gets by on quality. And on quality, it was okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't great. Like, for example, if you take a film like The Descendants, do you have the numbers on that one?
Yes, I do. Let's see.
I half assumed that it made money.
Oh, it made a lot of money. Yes. I think it's his most successful film as far as return on investment. Yeah. The budget was only $20 million, and it brought in $177 million at the box office.
Yeah, and the reason for that was basically word of mouth, because the film was reviewed so well, and I think it got some Oscar nominations. Not sure if it won any.
He was nominated for Best Actor.
But he didn't win.
No, not at the Oscars, but he did win the Golden Globe for Best Actor.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, the award winners tend to sometimes, more often than not, do okay because they have longer runs at the cinemas.
Yep.
Well, used to, not anymore. And I think that's how it got up there. But again, I think it's a good film, but it didn't make my top 15.
I think it did with me.
Seemed to be the case with quite a few films that I left out. Some of them I've already mentioned. Other ones that were also on that pretty good, but not great. Stuff like Tomorrowland wasn't terrible. Although I think that may have lost money because of a massive budget.
It did. It lost a lot.
Yeah.
I'll go through the bottom 5 as far as films that they didn't even make their money back. And Tomorrowland was number 5. It $209 million, and it only brought in $190 million at the box office.
Number 5 is in his 5th worst, right? Not
5th worst, yeah. So the 4th worst on box office on the numbers that I could find, because there was a couple of films that just didn't have any budget put down, or they were made through Netflix. So they don't release too much information there. But number 4 was Leatherheads, as I said, $58 million budget, $41 million at the box office. Solaris, that had a budget of $47 million, and it only brought back $30 million at the box office. So that's a 64% return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Collingwood, which I haven't been able to find, and it's probably no wonder. The budget was only $12 million, but it only brought back $4.2 million at the box office.
Not surprised, though, because it was a real kind of art housey type film, a really good cast. But, and it had actually decent word of mouth, but it was probably very difficult to get people to have interest in that kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, and then Clooney's worst film, as far as return on investment, was The Good German. $32 million budget and only $5.9 million back at the box office.
Yeah. And to me, it was, again, one of those films that was like, okay.
All right, being the numbers guy, I'll go to what the numbers say as far as IMDb goes. The number 1 film that wasn't animated, and he had a decent role in it, was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? That was 7.7.
Nice.
Yeah, and as was Ocean's 11. That was also 7.7.
Boo.
Then after that, we've got Up in the Air with 7.4.
That was tied with something, wasn't it?
Yeah. Also, Good Night and Good Luck also had it at 7.4.
Yeah.
After that, we had The Descendants at 7.3. From Dusk Till Dawn, 7.2. And Michael Clayton, also 7.2. Dusk Till Dawn was 8th. Michael Clayton 9th, and then the Ides of March and Three Kings, they both scored 7.1 on IMDb.
Wow, that's a surprise.
Yep.
Okay.
So when you look at it, like taking out those couple of films that he really wasn't in and taking out the animated films, even with all of that, his top 15 films are all rating 7 and above, which is pretty good.
Yeah. And some of them didn't make probably either of our lists.
No. Well, we'll get to that in a bit. Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes I almost agree entirely with the IMDb numbers, and sometimes you just think, who is getting on there and putting their votes in,
What were the 5 worst on IMDb?
Yeah, I'll just go with the 5 worst, whether we've seen them or not.
Because Batman and Robin probably tops that list.
Well, not quite. Yeah, going back to front, we've got Return of the Killer Tomatoes. That was a 5.2.
Oh, okay.
Spy Kids 3D, Game Over. That was 4.3. A film called Unbecoming Age was 4.1. Now, I don't even know if that was released, so I don't know how that got a 4.1. But anyway, on IMDb, it's a 4.1. After that, we've got Batman and Robin, 3.8. And then the worst one was Red Surf with 3.7.
Oh, okay. So that was one that was really kind of B-grade-ish and we haven't seen. It actually had a couple of familiar names in it.
I think so. It was released back in 1989. So back then, he really wasn't getting too many decent films offered to him. So I think he would have just grabbed anything that came along. And this was obviously anything that came along.
Who was in the film with him?
Doug Savant.
Oh, Melrose Place. Yep.
Yeah. And Dee Dee Pfeiffer.
Okay, nice.
And Philip McCann.
Oh.
So a couple of biggish names.
Well, they were well known at the time, at least like familiar faces. I mean, Dee Dee Pfeiffer is still around. Like, she was never a megastar, but and Doug Savant is probably also still around here and there. But yeah, then he was pretty big, Melrose Place and all that. So I guess it was the sort of the TV actors in this one.
Yeah,
Clooney from ER, and yeah. So that was the big draw card. So I'm not surprised that it rated so low, because probably it had not much of a sort of a story going for it.
No, and it was also probably coming towards the end of when you could put anything at all out on video and people would watch it.
Yeah. Today we have streaming for that. Cool.
That's right. Well, so that is what IMDb says. If I go to the highest return on investment, I've mentioned a couple of those. The number one film for George Clooney was The Descendants. We had a return of investment of 886%. Then came Good Night and Good Luck. Budget of $7 million, brought back $54.6 million. Now, I think that film was where he wrote it, directed, and acted in it, and he only paid himself $1 for each of those. So that would have kept the budget down and his deal of the back end right up.
$3. I like it.
Bargain.
Yeah. Well, his production company or whatever owned the rights, and he probably was like a passion project more than anything else.
That's right. The next most profitable was Up in the Air. $25 million budget, almost $167 million return.
Yeah, that was a sort of a strange one, because I remember when it came out, there was like talks that it should be or would be, but I don't think it was, nominated for Oscars as well. But it was like a sort of like a romantic drama.
Yeah, he was nominated for Best Actor, but that was it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it was just a very, very solid film that didn't quite follow the formula. It was a little bit different. And I like that. And I think a lot of other people did as well, which is kind of surprising. But yeah, I don't know if it was like Oscars material. And I think that might be, actually, I'm saying that in its favor.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, then the next one along was The Ides of March. So $12.5 million budget, $76 million at the box office. And that's another film that Clooney was nominated for an Oscar for, and that was for Best Adapted Screenplay.
So not for acting.
No, not for that one, no.
And that one also had, was it Ryan Gosling, yeah?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And neither one of them was nominated.
No.
They cancelled each other out.
That's it. And then after that, number 5 was Ocean's 11, $85 million budget, $450 million at the box office.
Kind of surprised it wasn't higher, because it's one of the sort of fan favorites.
Yep.
Of his work.
Then we've got Spy Kids 3D, $38 million budget, $197 million return. And then Burn After Reading, $37 million budget, $163 million return. So 440% return. So all of these films, very good return.
Just curious, but how did the Coen Brothers type do as far as the return?
Yeah, Hail Caesar, $22 million budget, $64 million return.
Okay, not bad.
So 291%. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? $26 million budget, almost $72 million return. Mm-hmm. Still very good. Was there another Coen Brothers?
No, I don't remember if they were Coen Brothers or not, but there were like similar types of films, like, Intolerable Cruelty.
with Intolerable Cruelty. The budget was 60 million and brought back a little over double that, 121 million at the box office.
Okay.
So most of his films have done okay at the box office, which, yeah, it's surprising when at one time he was doing one film for the studio and one film for him. And so even the films he was doing for him seem to be making money.
Yeah. He has a lot of interesting films in his filmography. Yeah, some roles that you wouldn't have expected him to kind of go for, but I think once he made From Dusk Till Dawn, he kind of opened it up to anything.
He did, and that was an interesting one because the budget on that was 19 million and it only brought in under 26 million at the box office.
I wouldn't be surprised if that figure was, bumped up to way more than that after, DVDs and everything, special screenings, all the rest of it, because it's a hugely popular cult film.
It is. I wonder if it had trouble getting onto screens because of all the blood and gore and everything.
Probably not. You get horror films everywhere. Maybe as far as the ratings, if they were trying to get a lower rating, I don't know.
Yeah.
I doubt it. But Three Kings also had, a lot of violence and...
It did, and a $75 million budget and only 107 million at the box office. So another one that didn't do terribly well at the box office.
Yeah, but I have a feeling that it kind of still managed to bring back the money and not lose just with DVD sales and DVD rentals and all that.
Yeah.
It was pretty popular. That's the thing, a lot of it. But again, it had probably a slightly bigger budget than most films around that time that he made.
Yeah, it had a lot of issues with filming as well. It was way over time, and Clooney didn't get along with the director because the director was abusing everybody, and there was a lot of problems.
David O. Russell?
David O. Russell, that's it. Yeah, David O. Russell. He said that he wouldn't work with Clooney again. If you paid him $25 million to direct, he wouldn't work with him again because Clooney wouldn't let him abuse people. He was a real bully on the set, and Clooney kept getting in the way of his bullying.
Because that also had Mark Wahlberg and Ice Cube, yeah?
Yeah.
A
good film. I really like it, but apparently a lot of friction behind the scenes.
It's pretty high on my list, that one. David O. Russell directed and co-wrote. But yeah, it's one of my favorite films of his. So it's pretty high on my list.
Yeah, no, it is. It stands up. It's very entertaining. Sometimes you just want to watch something entertaining.
Oh, Spike Jonze is in it. He's the Conrad Vig. He's like the fourth, like the next character down. I think it also had Cliff Curtis. It was a bit of a film. And Jamie Kennedy was in there.
The Jamie Kennedy experiment or experience, whatever it was.
Yeah. And Michael T. Williamson. Cut down on time. Maybe we should kind of run through our 15 to 11.
Yeah, I think so. Look, originally I was going to go with a top 7 or a top 10, and it just got too hard. So when I was talking to you and you said that you were going for 15, I thought, yep, good. 15 sounds good. Gives me a little bit more room to maneuver. So I'll run through my 15 through 11. My 15th favourite was The Ides of March. Then my 14th favourite was The Perfect Storm. It's not an exceptional film, but I like sailing, and so getting the occasional film where a boat's going underwater isn't too bad.
Yeah, no, we're also on a very mixed start because Ides of March did not make my top 15, but Perfect Storm is my 14th as well. We got a bullseye early on.
Then my 13th is a film I know. Yeah, it won't be on your list, and that was Ocean's 11.
Yeah, it wasn't far, but yeah, it's not on my list.
And then my number 12 was Syriana.
Ooh, it's higher on mine.
And then my 11 was Burn After Reading.
Oh, close. My 12th is Burn After Reading. So my 15th is actually The Midnight Sky, a film that he made last year for Netflix.
Yes, good film.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It might be a little low even on my list. Could be bumped higher sort of later. I think I just watched it yesterday, so it's kind of still kind of rolling around in my mind. But I was pleasantly surprised, not just with the film as far as the story and everything, but also with his performance. He's very good in it.
Yeah, he's looking very old in it, isn't he?
Yeah, they made him look old, and yeah, it worked in this one. 14th was The Perfect Storm, same as yours. My 13th was The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yep, very interesting film, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, is that in your list at all?
It isn't. No, I couldn't sneak that into my top 15. It is a very interesting film, and it does stick with you. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it didn't make it in mine.
My 12th was Burn After Reading. 11th, to my dismay, was The American, a film that I really like and I thought would get in there, but for this particular purpose, it didn't. Just missed out.
Yeah, the American, for me, I haven't seen it for a long time, so I didn't rate it anywhere near my top, but I'm sure if I saw it again, like most of his films, it would probably move around my rating.
Yeah. If I watched it again, it probably would have been bumped into the top 10. It's just, I watched it, a long time ago, shortly after it was released, and I just remember the story was fairly simple, but it was not one of those movies that, relied on a particularly original story or anything like that. It was very much kind of a mood piece and very sort of European, I thought, in style, which I like. And again, he was good in it, very understated, and one of his better films. I'm gonna have to watch it again, and I think once I do, it will probably get bumped up.
Yeah.
But since we're here, I might kick off my 10th. Because that kind of almost relates to why certain films were bumped out, because this one is a film that I watched also in the last couple of days, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised as to how much I liked it. Also one that may be going up the list in the future, and that's Hail Caesar.
Oh, Yahtzee. I got that at number 10 too.
There you go. I really, really, really liked it. I thought it was quirky and funny and interesting, and I could tell, I could see what they were trying to do, what they were trying to say, and it worked really, really well. And even the little song and dance numbers in the middle, just everything about it was just perfect. Just really, really enjoyed it. Again, it's a Coen Brothers film, and I'm a massive fan of the Coen Brothers, and I'm very much looking forward to recording an episode on them. But yeah, it's definitely a great film. I really liked it.
Yeah, and again, Clooney was very good in it. Josh Brolin, very good as well.
Yes, and Josh Brolin was really the lead. I'd say, Clooney was probably the second lead. And some of the facial expressions in this one that he put on, and he was just fantastic. Definitely a much better actor than I think he's given credit for. Like people say, he's very charismatic, but it's not just that. He's also a very, very good actor.
Yeah, and looking at who's in it, it's also got Ralph Fiennes and Scarlett Johansson and Tilda Swinton, Channing Tatum. Can't be a Coen Brothers film without Frances McDormand. Yep, she's got to be in it. And even Jonah Hill snuck in there.
Jonah Hill snuck in there in a very, very entertaining cameo, I would say. He was in there for not very long at all. David Krumholtz actually was also in there, for people who know who he is, in a very entertaining role as well.
So really good cast,
Yeah, and Tilda Swinton in a dual role. And the guy who plays Hobie, or the cowboy actor, again, it's someone who's been in a few films, and Alden Ehrenreich. Now, this still looks like a kid, but I'm sure he's a bit older. He was really good. Kind of reminded me of like a newer version of like Horst Buchholz, from The Magnificent Seven and other films. So I was really impressed with him, and it again added to the film. Fantastic film, a great addition, I thought, to the Coen Brothers list of films.
Well, my next one, my ninth, was The Descendants, which I know you didn't rate terribly highly, but I really enjoyed it.
I did too. I watched it, I liked it, but I was left without much of an impression. It was like, it's above average, it's not in my 15.
So what's your number 9?
My number 9 is Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
My number 8.
Yeah, that's a film that I would probably rate much higher, like possibly top 5. The thing is, Clooney's role in it was fairly small, but he did direct it, I believe.
He did, yes, yeah. And screenplay, Charlie Kaufman. So that says a fair bit about the story.
Yeah, I think it's a much better film than I, sort of rated it in my top 10. But we're not looking at films, we're looking at Clooney films. So I had a tough time thinking of it necessarily as a Clooney film.
Yeah, under our other conditions, he could have almost slipped out of this as not being a Clooney film, as you said. But directing and being in it in a smaller role probably got him in. Yeah,
and again, a great film, a bit of a favorite of mine. I love this movie. I'm feeling worse and worse talking about it, that it's like only 8th on my list.
Yeah,
or 9th or whatever I said.
9 for you, 8 for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. My 8th was Up in the Air.
My 6th.
Ooh, what's your 8th?
Too far off. My 8th, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. So.
Well, we're not terribly far on some of them. My 8th, Up in the Air. I like it. Again, like I said, it's a solid film. Both performances were really good. One of those that I really enjoyed. There's something about the subject matter that may have dropped it down a bit, being kind of a romantic drama without real romance between those two characters, which was also interesting in a way. No, it's a solid film.
I wonder if watching it now, it'd be one of those nostalgic films, harking back to the time when you used to be able to go to the airport and get on a plane,
Yeah, from like 12 years ago.
But again, a very good cast. It's got George Clooney, it's got Anna Kendrick, Jason Bateman, J.K. Simmons, who I know is one of your favourites.
Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I said, a very, very good film, and it was never going to slip out of my top 10, but it was probably more sort of serious films, I think, got ahead of it in this list.
Yeah.
Which is a good segue into my number 7th, which is Good Night and Good Luck.
My number 5, yes. So I rated a little bit higher.
Yeah, I was almost surprised that it didn't rate higher. It was, I was flipping back and forth with my number 6, which is Syriana. And I think those two were like his biggest sort of Academy films. They did really well.
He did. He won Best Supporting Actor Oscar in that year. And he also won the Golden Globe for Syriana.
Best Supporting Actor, which was weird because he was the main actor.
Well, yeah, one off anyway.
It was like an ensemble cast, but his role was prominent as I remember it. Yeah, and Good Night and Good Luck was also nominated for quite a few, also to do with directing and with writing. I can't remember if he won or not, but it was a big one in there.
Yeah, he was nominated for Best Director and Best Original Screenplay for the Academy Awards, but didn't win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But again, very good films, both of them. They're my 6 and 7, and I've been flipping back and forth all day, and that's how they kind of landed. I think his performance, again, because it's a George Clooney list, his performance in Syriana was better, so I kind of gave it the edge.
Yep.
In Good Night and Good Luck, he had a smaller role with a bit less impact, but he did direct it.
And wrote it, yeah.
Yeah, co-wrote it and directed it, yeah.
Yep.
So, I was impressed by both. Very fond of those two films. So you were saying that Good Night and Good Luck was your 5th.
My 5th, yes.
Okay, so what am I missing from you?
Out of Sight was my 7th.
Oh, okay. I will just say it's a bit higher on mine. What was your 6th again?
My 6th was Up in the Air. My 5th was Good Night and Good Luck.
Yep. My 5th, Michael Clayton.
And that was my 4th, yep. Yeah.
Again, solid thriller. I really enjoyed it. Something about this film. I always, like, people ask me about it. I say, well, it's not necessarily one of my favorite thrillers of all time.
Yep.
But it's a solid film. Great performances, a good story, keeps you in it.
It is, yeah. And again, I think I mentioned before, he was nominated for Best Actor for that too.
Yeah. He's gotten more nominations than we remember, I think. But yeah. But with the Oscars, though, it's a strange one. A lot of the times they just kind of include someone to fill a spot more than anything. I don't think he was ever going to win for that.
I think he's very well loved by the Academy, as they call it. He's actually the only person to be nominated in 6 different categories at the Academy Awards.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, he's talented.
So that's really impressive when you consider all the different people that have done so many different things, Orson Welles, all those sort of people. The only person to be nominated for 6 different categories.
So Michael Clayton, you said, was your number 4?
Yep. And then my number 3.
Before we jump into our top 3s, we're not missing any more of yours, just my number 4, yeah?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, my number 4, this one is also sort of to my dismay. I thought it would crack the top 3. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah, that's my number 1.
Yeah, no, I love that movie. It's not my number 1, but I do love it. Again, big fan of the Coen brothers. This film has one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard, and it is very kind of quirky, fantastic performances. It's actually, that one also has a good cast.
Really good cast, and as you said, really good soundtrack by the Soggy Bottom Boys, and been said so many times before, but George Clooney, he's the nephew of Rosemary Clooney, who's a famous singer, and George Clooney has such a terrible singing voice that I think he was the only one in the cast that had to have his singing dubbed. Everybody else sung, and he wasn't good enough to sing.
Really?
Yeah.
Everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's embarrassing, isn't it?
No, but it's also surprising that just him. It's not that embarrassing. I mean, not everybody sings, but
Tim Blake Nelson, he's actually got a very good singing voice.
Yeah, but he's got that about him. But John Turturro, I would have
apparently good enough, but George Clooney wasn't good enough.
And John Goodman. Yeah, but this one also has Holly Hunter, Charles Durning, I remember, was in this.
Yeah.
And Michael Badalucco, who was more famous for TV around that time.
Yeah, The Practice.
Exactly. Great cast. It was a bit slapsticky, which is something I don't like, but I did love this movie. It like didn't make a difference. There was something about it that was a bit like that, you know, in sort of that slapstick style.
There was, and it was almost like Clooney was playing Clark Gable. He was almost like playing a Clark Gable that was just so cocky, you know.
I haven't seen it in quite a while. And the thing about it was I remember that the top three characters in it, really, Clooney, Torturo, and Tim Blake Nelson, all kind of played bumbling idiots.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of which one is sort of the least stupid of the three of them, was kind of the leader, which was Clooney.
Yeah.
And that to me kind of lacked balance, you know, because if they're all stupid, it's like, you know, who's going to pull it together? But when I watched it, I loved every moment of it.
Yeah, really, really
So
good film.
entertaining. Yeah, and the look of it and everything. But again, it's the Coen Brothers, you know. It's just I can't really say I've seen a bad film from them, but you know. So I don't know if we ever do them, I don't know if I'll be able to find a worse list. But in this one again, because we were looking at favorite Clooney specifically films, it is just out of my top three.
Yeah, and like I said, my number one. So, well, what was your number three?
My number three was Out of Sight.
Oh yeah, my number seven.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Love that movie. I think that was like sort of the introduction to J-Lo as an actress, was it? Or did she?
I think she would have done a few before that, but this was one of her better films for sure.
As far as a credible actress, I mean, this was a role that people started saying, you know what, she's pretty good, and I definitely agree. What year was it?
1998.
98, yeah. So it's pretty far. A fairly long time ago by these standards, but yeah.
Yeah, before that she'd done U-Turn and Anaconda, so she hadn't, well...
Yeah, terrible films.
Blood and Wine and Jack, but yeah, she hadn't done... Well, Money Train she was in that. She wasn't, you know, great, but yeah. After Out of Sight, then you had The Cell, and then, I don't know, she seemed to fall apart after that. Wedding Planner and things like that.
Yeah, but I remember, I think I saw Out of Sight at the cinema, and that was a Steven Soderbergh film, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah,
and again, based on an Elmore Leonard novel, so that had a little bit of that, you know, Jackie Brown type of feel to it, because again, that was also written by Elmore Leonard. But I was just really, really impressed with both of them in the lead, the chemistry between them, and how good she was. Up until that point, I never really credited her much as an actress. And with him, that was also one of those roles where I thought he was very good. It still like didn't jump out at me as much as he did in my number one film, which is coming up. But yeah, very good. I have to say, Don Cheadle almost stole the show.
Yes, he was very good. Dennis Farina as well. That was around that time where he was he was having some good performances in a lot of films.
And a lot of Elmore Leonard films, because he was also in Get Shorty.
Yeah.
Catherine Keener was in this one, and Ving Rhames.
Yeah.
So it had a very good cast.
Albert Brooks,
yes.
Louis Guzman,
Steve Zahn.
Yeah. So there's quite a few people in it, but yeah, it was Clooney and J-Lo, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, and again, Don Cheadle, I thought, you know, was very close to stealing the show. It was just one of those really, really good kind of crime films with a story that we may have kind of heard before or seen before, but very, very, very solid film. Also had a very good soundtrack, and it's one of those films that you know, will sort of forever be one of my favorites of his.
Yeah. So
that made my top three.
So that was your three. My number three was Three Kings.
Three Kings, my number two.
Ooh, probably doesn't surprise me. I know it is one of your favorites, as it is one of mine.
Yeah, no, fantastic film. I'm sure I heard all these stories before, but now that you repeated them about David O. Russell and the friction on set, it's surprising that it came out as well as it did.
Yes.
Generally, that would hurt a film. In this one, it wasn't noticeable.
Yeah.
It is just a really great film, you know, really great sort of action, sort of a war film, but also had kind of like a buddy film quality to it.
It did. And it's also an American film where the Americans aren't necessarily the good guys.
Yeah.
They are, but they're not. There's that ambiguity sort of thing that sort of adds a little layer to it.
Not portrayed as shiny.
Yeah. Yeah,
and just the top four, I should say, cast really good. You know, George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, Ice Cube, and Spike Jonze. But also having Cliff Curtis, Jamie Kennedy, Saeed Taghmaoui, who most people would know his face, but not by name, Michael T. Williamson, Judy Greer, just a really, really, really good cast.
Yeah, and well, interesting, Judy Greer, she's usually in comedies.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a departure for her.
Yeah, but this film had something of a comedy in it. It was a little bit tongue in cheek, even the political statements made in it, and it's funny because the Spike Jonze's role was a bit more comedic, but some of the lines coming out of Ice Cube and Mark Wahlberg made it a little bit more lighthearted, even though it was very, very serious subject matter. Yeah, fantastic film, and I think it also succeeded where some other films haven't, because there were a lot of films around that time, around the Gulf War, trying to make films to do with that, and not all of them were great successes.
Yeah, so that was my number 3, your number 2. My number 2 was From Dusk Till Dawn.
My number 1.
Whoa, so, well, that means that out of the top 10, we've got 9 of our top 10 are the same, just in different orders.
Yeah, no, and probably, not necessarily a lot of ones that ended up on exactly the same spot, but this is probably the closest it's been, I think, in our lists, which is very surprising with someone like Clooney, because, it tends to be kind of polarizing. A lot of people don't feel the same way about his films.
And he's done 40 films or so to get most of the top 10 similar is pretty amazing, really.
Yeah, and very, very different films. But From Dusk Till Dawn, I don't know if it can ever be bumped from top spot as far as this list is concerned. It is one of my absolute favorite films of all time. One of those that kind of blew me away in a way I didn't expect it to. Not necessarily with a twist in the story or anything like that, but just with the fact that they could make a film that felt like almost like two separate films, where it changes on a dime in the middle of it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it still was as enjoyable as, like the second half was as enjoyable as the first, if not more in a way. Even more so for this list, for a Clooney list, this was the film that made me kind of sit up and take notice and go, oh my God, he is really good. His coolest role by far.
It is, and it's interesting that the screenplay was by Quentin Tarantino. Then you've got Robert Rodriguez directing it, and I think editing it. So he's cut it down to 1 hour and 48 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a Tarantino screenplay and a normal length film and a really, really entertaining film.
And Tarantino having a significant role in the film.
Yeah, that's right.
Playing his brother, Clooney's brother. And he was creepy as but really good.
He was. And look, you were saying about Clooney's look and everything like that in this film. Something you may not be aware of, but you, me, and George Clooney have a fair bit in common.
We do?
We all cut our own hair.
Okay.
So for that film, he cut his own hair. Yeah.
I was sure you weren't going to say bank accounts.
If only. But yeah, so he cut his own hair for that film and he wanted to look creepy. So he's cut this like a Roman cut. And apparently it became really, really almost in style because he had it in that film. So it didn't work the way he wanted it to.
Yeah, it looked almost like a mullet without the hair in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just fit with the character and everything. Like they had this, the tattoos on him and stuff. You never really saw the full tattoo. You just saw it coming out of his shirt kind of thing. But I never thought Clooney would be able to play this type of criminal and it be this believable. He was just like a badass, but also a logical and a good person, even though he was a criminal.
Yeah.
He just the whole time was trying not to hurt anyone, and it was always like trying to be the voice of reason. But he looked tough as nails and just really something about all the facial expressions in this one. Like the scene where Harvey Keitel and the family arrive in this sort of Winnebago type vehicle, and and they almost run him over, and he stands there and he just sort of tilts his neck to the side and looks at him. That stare for me, it was like, oh, this is going to be so good because this was early on in the film, and it just made me think, yeah, this guy just with that stare, didn't say anything, was fantastic. Great work. And again, we didn't even mention that, Harvey Keitel is in this movie.
Juliette Lewis is the daughter, and probably most importantly for you, Salma Hayek.
Yes. And also going back to talking about dual roles and stuff, Chich Marin.
3 roles.
Yeah.
Ah.
So multiple roles, I should have said. And Danny Trejo.
Yeah, well, that was back in Robert Rodriguez's very low budget days.
Yes.
So he would round up the usual suspects, anybody that would want to have a fun time on the set, and get them to play a few roles if needed.
Yeah, and this movie just made me happy on like so many fronts, because even stuff like it had very small roles, like by John Saxon, who recently passed away. He was the FBI agent, and all he has is this little TV interview role. Also Kelly Preston,
Yes,
who recently passed away. But again, Michael Parks in a very, very good role. Yeah. And I mentioned Danny Trejo and also Tom Savini as Sex Machine, a guy who is usually more behind the scenes, like an special effects god, practical effects, I should say, but in sort of, in horror films.
Yeah.
But for me, massive highlight was seeing Fred Williamson. I have not seen him in a decent role, or any role, I think, for a long time at that stage. And I was a massive fan of his in the sort of early 80s. A lot of those sort of action and blaxploitation type films. He was just one of those guys, kind of like a black Clint Eastwood back then. And seeing him in this was just, yeah. And he has that speech, where he gets up and he talks about Vietnam and how he got up and took out the whole unit by himself with a knife. This whole speech. Yeah, just fantastic. I loved this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see this one ever moving from this number one list, from this list at number one anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's been a lot of sort of speculation about directing of this film. A lot of people thought that maybe Tarantino directed the first half and Rodriguez the second. But I think Rodriguez directed the whole film. It's just Robert Kurtzman and Tarantino wrote the script.
Yep.
I think it was Kurtzman's story, and Tarantino wrote it. So it has all that, cool Tarantino dialogue, throughout.
And this was right at the start of their bromance as well, Tarantino and Rodriguez. So, yeah, Tarantino, I'm sure, was on the set every day, hanging out, just,
Well, he was one of the main roles, so.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course it was, yeah.
And it was tough for him to be behind the camera when he had to be in front of it.
Yeah, well, he found a way, yeah.
Yeah, true.
But you're right. This is probably his best acting performance.
Yeah, and his most significant role.
Yeah.
After this one, I think a film that he's been in and had the most lines is probably Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
So yeah, but in this one, you could tell, he really needed to act. And even though sometimes you watch it and you can almost see his mind ticking over as far as what he should do next, it still worked because the character was such a weirdo. So yeah, really, really good.
No, a really good film. Oh, I guess we should run through our top 10.
You can run through your top 15, that's fine.
All right, I'll go through my top 15 then. All right, so number 15 for me was The Ides of March. Then 14, The Perfect Storm. At 13, Ocean's 11. At 12, Syriana. 11, Burn After Reading. 10, Hail Caesar. At 9, I Had the Descendants. At 8, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. 7, Out of Sight. 6, Up in the Air. 5, Good Night and Good Luck. 4, Michael Clayton. 3, Three Kings. 2, From Dusk Till Dawn. And 1, Oh Brother, We're Out There.
So we had two bullseyes. We had at number 14, The Perfect Storm, and at number 10, Hail Caesar. But aside from that, yeah, quite a lot of similarities, just not exactly the same. I had, at number 15, I had his new film, The Midnight Sky. At number 14, again, the bullseye, The Perfect Storm. At 13, The Men Who Stare at Goats. At 12, Burn After Reading. At 11, The American. At 10, the other bullseye, Hail Caesar. At 9, I had Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. At 8, Up in the Air. At 7, Good Night and Good Luck. At 6, Syriana. At 5, Michael Clayton. At 4, Oh Brother, We're Out Thou, your number 1. And at 3, I had Out of Sight. At 2, Three Kings. And number 1, From Dusk Till Dawn.
Well, I guess anybody, somebody's out there listening and is after a bit of a recommendation, that would really, you can't go wrong with most of those films.
Very surprised as to how many decent films Clooney has. Like so many, I knew there were some, but yeah, he's sort of top 10, even top 15, and especially top 5, just very, very impressive.
No, that's true. One thing I wanted to mention, we were talking about, how likable it is and how charismatic he is. And I just wanted to mention that, how much he's renowned for his practical jokes. He tends to play them on so many people that I don't know how you'd be his friend, because you wouldn't be able to treat him seriously, I don't think. But there's one I remember hearing about where Clooney had just broken up with his girlfriend at the time, and he was crashing on the couch of an actor friend, Richard Kind, who's been in lots of things. But anyway, he's crashing on the couch, and Richard Kind had this cat that used to go to the toilet in the kitty litter that was in the bathroom right next to the toilet, and the cat would go, 2 or 3 times a day, and Richard Kind, he wouldn't clean up after the cat very often. So Clooney had scooped it up and put it in the toilet and flush and stuff. Anyway, one day he decided that he'd play a joke on Richard Kind. So he was putting it in the toilet, and Richard Kind was oh, geez, the cat hasn't sort of been to the toilet for 4 or 5 days. I haven't seen anything in the kitty litter. Of course, Clooney had been cleaned up. So Clooney decided to go with it and go, oh, that's interesting. Well, and so then Clooney made sure that he cleaned up after the cat every single time. And it got to be about 4 or 5 days, and Richard Kind's getting really worried, so he took the cat to the vet to try to work out if there's something wrong with it. And the vet couldn't see anything wrong with it, but gave him some sort of like a Metamucil type of medicine for cats, and he was giving that to the cat. And now all of a sudden the cat's going to the toilet 7 or 8 times a day, and Clooney's racing in there and flushing down the toilet, and it goes another week, and Richard Kind's getting really, really worried because this medicine isn't working, the cat's not crapping, and so Clooney thinks, oh yeah, enough's enough. So Clooney decides he'll take this big human dump in the kitty litter and puts the kitty litter over it, and then just walks away, and he's like, oh, I'm just sitting there watching Jeopardy or something on TV, and Richard Kind comes out and says, what the hell's going on? He couldn't believe that this crap had come out of the cat.
That's a good one. But yeah, I'm just thinking the cat must have been really pissed off with Clooney.
Well, yeah, I guess. But yeah, and there's other ones where he goes to these really elaborate pranks, which, they're not, mean spirit, I suppose, for the cat. Maybe that one wasn't a great one.
Yeah.
But he goes to really, long lengths to prank his friends.
Yeah, from stories that came out, especially with the Ocean's films, having both him and Brad Pitt on the same set, and they would prank each other and everybody else apparently. And some of the pranks have reportedly been, the stuff of legend. So they really like to plan them out and put a lot of thought into those pranks apparently.
Yeah, well, that's right. There was one almost straight out of a MASH episode where Clooney was getting the tailor on the set to loosen Matt Damon's uniform in one of the films, and so Matt Damon would be putting on the clothes in the morning, and it was loose, and so Matt Damon thought he was losing weight, so he was eating and eating and eating, and then one day after a couple of weeks, Clooney got the tailor to take it back into where it was supposed to be, and his uniform wouldn't fit.
I wonder how true that is.
Apparently it is, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah, because the production would have been very pissed off. We have Fat Damon now. What are we going to do with him?
Yeah. Well, apparently for Syriana, Clooney, he gained something like 20 or 30 pounds or something. So,
And not all of it in facial hair. He grew that beard for it. I think that was the first time. Since then, he's done many films with that beard.
Yeah, that's true.
It's an interesting one. But again, we mentioned it before, all these pranks and everything, but he has a reputation of being just the nicest guy. Real kind of down to earth, not really, not buying into his own hype kind of thing.
Well, that's it. I was reading recently where one of his quotes is that people say that actors are all assholes, but they're not. It's just that the people that they surround themselves with make them seem like they are. So they might get an assistant who says, oh, Mr. Clooney doesn't like you looking at him, or he doesn't want you to talk to him, or he doesn't want to interact with you or whatever. And then Clooney's like, no, I never said that. So then he sort of has to have a talk with his people and say, no, look, you're making me look bad. So don't do that. Don't shield me from these people. I want to talk to them. If they want to come up and talk to me, let them talk to me, because otherwise it just makes him look like a dick.
And for a long time, he was like probably the most renowned Hollywood bachelor.
Yes, I think he did all right.
Yeah, who did not want to get hitched or just didn't for whatever reason. Probably didn't find the right person, and just only in recent years, I think he got married.
Yeah, twins as well. Yeah.
So finally settling down.
That's right, and making his coffee commercials. So life's good.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. There's something about him that is just so likable. Comes across probably his personality as far as just being a good guy, down to earth, that everybody seems to like. And as far as, as being an actor, in his early days, when he was on ER and everything, people liked the show, but people who didn't watch the show, I didn't.
I did.
Yeah, but I couldn't really get into him as far as an actor in film. I always thought he was a bit of a Fonzie kind of character, look at me, I'm so cool. But then when he started making films, the roles were varied and, he got to kind of show what he can do. So, yeah, today I very much like him. I think he also kind of aged well in a lot of ways and seems to be possibly improving as an actor, as time goes by. So that's a good one. And also he's a pretty good writer and director,
Yes.
Some of the scripts that he was involved with and some of the films he made are just very, very good as far as directors go.
Yeah, and because he at least comes across as a nice guy, he might be a better actor than we give him credit for, and maybe he's a bit of a prick in real life, but I doubt it. But because he comes across that way, he does really well, because he said things where he's honoured to actually be in the same room as other people of the Academy and how much these awards mean to him and all that stuff, where other people, they're too cool for it. They go, oh, no, I don't care if I win or I don't win or whatever. So he knows how to play the game. Yeah,
and he just seems very laid back and genuine. I think, there have been many actors over time, and when you're in the industry for this long, if you're putting on a facade of a nice guy, but you're not, it will come out sooner or later. You're going to have your Mel Gibson moment, your Russell Crowe, your whatever. A lot of actors have had that. Christian Bale, and he just hasn't in a long time. There has never been, a really bad incident with him. Either, you either put it down to having a bad day or to showing their true colors, Yeah. But with him, I just have not seen it.
No.
So I would kind of, assume that, the guy's for real. And I think Brad Pitt is a little bit similar to that. And that's why, they're probably such sort of good friends, because they have a lot in common.
Look, the one thing we haven't mentioned, I guess, is the fact that he won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for Syriana. He also won Best Picture with Argo. He was one of the producers of Argo.
Yes, I remember that. And many nominations.
Yes, lots of nominations, and I only mentioned the Academy ones. There's Golden Globes he's won, which I mentioned, but there's a lot of awards that he's been nominated for over the years.
He's not, I would say, a top tier director, but I don't think he's made enough films as yet.
Yep.
I would very much like to kind of see him, in the future creep up that list. He seems to be kind of drawn to Coen Brothers type material. I hope that he kind of goes that way.
I think that's his sense of humor. Apparently he's a huge South Park fan, which is why.
Yeah, he was in the film.
Yes, and also he was in an episode where he was, I think he met up with Trey Parker and was sort of saying, look, I'd really like to be in an episode. Big fan. And so they made him, was it Rusty the gay dog? And all he got to do was sort of woof and yelp and stuff. So they didn't even give him a speaking part.
No favoritism.
No. And then in the South Park movie, they actually made fun of him and his political views. And he thought it was hilarious. He thought, well, I'd be disappointed if they didn't make fun of me. All right, very good. We probably should finish it there. Thanks very much for that. It's a very good talk about George Clooney.
Yep, been fun.
And as you're saying, it brought up a few ideas, I guess, for the Coen Brothers. So maybe we should have a look at them in the near future.
We definitely should. I'm all for it. Big fan.
Excellent. All right, very good. I'll talk to you again later.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Best and Worst podcast.
We'd like to thank everyone who joined and listened to the show. We appreciate you all and hope you'll keep coming back for following episodes. A big thank you goes out to Tam Heinjus for helping us out tremendously and voicing our intro, and Scott Martin for working his magic on the intro sound edit. Also, a big thank you goes out to Asaf Angel for all the help with the logo design. Great work, everyone. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you.
If you like the show, then please recommend the podcast to your family and friends, and subscribe, share, follow, leave a comment. You know the drill. For more information, please check out the show notes. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again next week.